Welcome to the I-5 report. I'm your host, Raj, and
Hey everybody,
Chad.
my name's Chad.
I'm glad you got that. I was like, do I say we are I'm your co-host? Yeah, anyways, we're getting there.
Still
So
working
what
out the details.
yeah, what's the vibe, Chad?
The vibe is summer, man. We're about to swim today, gonna get in the pool, have a good time with the family, a couple other families, and yeah, and I'll also throw out there double digits, man. Getting close
Double
to double
D's.
digits.
Double D's.
Yep.
Um
Episode 9, we're getting close to the double
oh,
D's.
sorry. I'm sorry. What's the vibe for me? Gosh, I don't even know how to. I hope Madison doesn't get upset that I said this. Speaking of double D's, after pregnancy, my wife's getting a lot of back pain from the double D's, and so this. Let's unpack this at some point. Motherhood is very hard, and then your body changes, and then as a husband, you're like, okay, I love you for who you are, but then she's like, my back hurts. And I'm like, so you want to go down to C's? Is that what you're telling me? Basically, breast reduction.
You,
Um,
yeah, no, I got the hint. You may be digging yourself a hole here, bro.
yeah. Well, and it's like, yeah, so that's my vibe. So the whole time we were shopping for her school, it just constantly kept coming up. And it's just like, it's just a topic that we need to unpack someday. But, anyways, uh, today's topic is high speed rail, California high speed rail. Chad,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? What a disaster.
Well, yeah, the first thought that comes to mind is what my dad always used to say about it and probably still says about it. I haven't talked to him in a little while, but he always called it the train to nowhere, which seems to be making a resurgence. I have no doubt that he probably got that from whatever media outlets he was watching at the time. He's probably still seeing it today. That seems to be a recirculation of that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, in theory, the idea makes sense. I like the idea of high speed rail, something that's going to go 200 miles an hour and ideally connect the state together and potentially the state to other states. Like that's the future, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
If I could not deal with an airport and get to Los Angeles or better yet Anaheim for Disneyland in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, I would do that all day, every day with a
Yeah.
toddler.
Yes.
Uh, but I can't
Yes.
do that because currently the train is a train to nowhere because there are no tracks laid lane, and it's the initial segment is supposed to be from Merced to Bakersfield.
Yeah. On that note, and I've told you this off camera. I saw this Facebook post or a comment under the high speed rail, and it was the most liked comment, and it said, "Get your tickets, guys. The the tickets from Merced to Bakersfield would be popping." And I thought it was so funny because that and Prince, like that guy just basically won the internet and then summarized the issue, right? That's like it's brilliant because they decide when I say they, the California government decided to build this train. And it was a good intent to connect the Central Valley to the coastal areas, but it came with such a huge price tag that it was not even worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
What was the original price tag? Do you recall
oh,
what that was?
yeah, good question. It was probably a huge number, but
It
let's
was
say,
sort of a
okay,
leading question. It
yeah,
was originally voted in at 33 billion dollars in 2008.
okay,
That was approved by voters,
okay.
and generally speaking, I think voters still back the project. But in any case, go on.
No, so yeah, so I found 10 billion, but it said 10 billion bond, so I don't know the like how they got to 33 billion, but now the cost is 100 billion, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the completion date was supposed to be 2020, and now
Yeah.
we're 6 months from now we'll be in 2026, and
Oh, don't say that, man. You just hurt me.
I know. As I'm saying,
COVID was
just
6 years ago. Oh my god.
yeah. um, and so they haven't had a single writer use it, and that brings an interesting question. I mean, there's several ways you can kind of think about this, but I kind of want to double click on the money part of it, right?
Sure.
Um, 33 billion, let's just say, right now, um, over $100 billion, right?
Hmm.
And there's this notion, or there's this news circulating on media that California is the fourth largest economy, fourth or fifth, it doesn't matter, but it's in the top five, right? And
It's more or less its own country in terms of GDP. Like it
sure,
holds its weight with some of the bigger ones.
yeah, and so the question becomes how much money should have been put into this. But I feel that because the government knows that we're in such a big economy, that 33 billion, what's a big deal there, right? That's
Hmm.
nothing. And so that's not really good steward of tax dollars, in my opinion. And now, since 2008, how many people have moved out of California, and how much has the gas price gone up? Because gas tax, right? That's a whole nother segment that we're going to do. And then,
Yeah.
uh, and there's not a single person that has used this. And it's sad. It's sad because it, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the money management? And do you have a suggestion how they could have done the money part of it?
You know, I think probably what comes into play a lot here is the various legal battles that they've run into. So maybe we
Yeah,
can transition to talk about that a little bit because, fighting legal battles is expensive. And I think the plans to do it in the Central Valley maybe had good intentions, or maybe they thought it was a good idea and it would be easy. And it turns out that it actually wasn't easy. And yeah, so maybe we can dive into that a little bit and
sure.
see where maybe all of that money is going.
Yeah, the first lawsuit that I'm looking at was Proposition 1A compliance lawsuit. It was John Toss versus California High Speed Rail Authority. And then the next one was the environmental lawsuit under CEQA. And
Hmm.
that is the story of California, right? The um, Because California is such a big economy, that injury lawyers or environmental lawyers or just any law firm could see that there's money in the government, there's money in the economy. How do I get a piece of that?
Hmm.
And that's at least my view on it. And then there's the other story of California, which is that we have these environmental laws that we've talked about this on other podcasts, that it prevents building any housing,
Right.
and it just becomes a self sabotage. So
Right.
yeah, horrible.
I mean, I'm honestly kind of surprised, and this is a bit sad to say, how much progress they have made on this. Um, I mean, there is a significant amount of work that has been done, right?
Okay.
Um, it's I've granted, I will say, no tracks have been laid yet. That's kind of if you're building a railway and you don't have any tracks, then what do you actually have to show for it, right?
Hmm.
But there have been a lot of positives, right?
Yeah.
Looking at my notes here, um, I lost it.
Yeah. While you look that up, I'm gonna say that yeah, not all is lost, but we also need to talk about at some point of the recent events of
Yes.
President Trump wanting to pull the funding on the high speed rail. And there's a lot of people that uh, are supporting that idea, but I get it that people are upset and they want to cut their losses. But this mismanagement, it's not an all or none thing, right? Just because there was mismanagement doesn't mean you throw the whole project away. right? Um,
Right.
I I get the anger, but go ahead. You were gonna.
No, I'm.
Did you find
Yeah.
anything there?
No, I didn't. I think we can move on from that. But the one thing I'll say about it is that it's not been a total loss, right? Like 15,000 people in the San Joaquin Valley, or in Kern County in particular, would probably beg to differ and say that this project has brought jobs for their families, right? So,
Yeah.
like, there is some positive benefit to it. Now, the people on the outside looking in, like the federal government, to your point, are not seeing the results, right? Like, they're not
Mhm.
living the benefits of having that job. They're
Yeah.
looking for the end results, which are not really here at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that because there's two ways to look at any kind of project, right? Process based or outcome based, right?
Yep.
Process looks good. With the exception of mismanagement of money and lawsuits, but then there's the outcome based. Where are the outcomes? But I also want to say this that um, they could they could have done a different they could have taken a different route to building this high speed rail, right? So I used AI to research this, and it had several suggestions for the California high speed rail, which was to use the existing right of way and rail infrastructure, the Caltrain tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They We could have used that, and instead of using this model of electrification of trains and transit, we could have gone diesel and maybe do a smaller route. My wife and I talked about this. She's very much an avalanche person that likes to get the hardest thing done first, and I'm more of a snowball person that says, "Hey,
Like, take the
let's start."
smallest step you can, make
Yeah,
some progress, and go forward. What's the maximum speed of a diesel locomotive? I wonder. I'm going to look that up while you continue because I'm not convinced that that, like, sometimes you have to take a few steps back to move forward, or a few steps side to the
sure.
side to move forward. My light just turned off. How do I turn that back on? That's
Mm,
okay. In any case, that's fine. Uh,
technical
but
difficulties.
yeah, I'm not sure that going diesel would really satisfy the promise of a high speed rail, so to speak. So I'm going to look up the maximum speed of
Yeah,
that.
but also, right? What did they overpromise, right? And did they overpromise so that they can get this passed, right? To justify $13 billion or $33 billion, they had to make these promises to justify that cost. And maybe their thought was, hey, let's get the huge sums of money now, because who knows if it will get passed later down the road,
Mm-hmm.
and get the most money possible, like taking on debt, and instead of just being better about money. And the other thing is that I agree. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily excite a whole lot of people, but um, I do think that there would have been writers, and we could have made money, and it would have
How is that
snowballed.
different from Amtrak, though?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question. But so Amtrak connects. You have to. I like Elon said this. He said trains are interesting. You have to. They take you where you don't want to go, and then you still have to use a second mode of transportation to get to where you want to go, which is kind of where Uber came
Yeah,
along, the
yeah.
autonomous driving came along, and to me, yeah, there's truth to that. Yeah, you have to go somewhere where it's inconvenient, like the train station, and then from the train station, you get dropped off where it's not your final destination, and then you got to go further. But to me, that's okay because trains are not just mode of transportation; they could also be trains are a good way to learn about engineering. They're good about I know you said earlier there are schools that are invested in this that are teaching their kids on about. There's trade schools involved, teaching
Mm-hmm.
kids. teaching students on about construction, bridges, the
Kids love
ducks.
trains.
Yeah, kids love trains, right?
Yeah.
So not everything has to have this clear cut of like, okay, and some things do, but
Hmm.
at the same time, like we have rockets, we go to moon, but is that a final destination for anyone? Not necessarily, but it's innovation, right? It's
True.
innovation. We have NASA. So that's my thought on
So,
that.
so if I understand your suggestion to use the existing railways, are you saying to use the existing infrastructure that's in place and just kind of create new infrastructure at the very ends to connect
Yeah.
more locations
Yeah, snowball it.
and do that?
Snowball it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
snowball it. And they went the avalanche route, and now it has so much scrutiny, and it's been ongoing. So let's look at it here. They've been talking about this since 1998, I believe, and
Hmm.
they're having the or 1996. That was when the California High Speed Rail Authority was actually established to oversee the planning, um, and it took
So
12
there
years.
are probably some people who started that authority, that agency. This is a total speculation. I'm not sure if it's true, but there are probably some people who retired out of their government careers. So they
Yeah,
started in the High Speed Rail Authority when it was first opened. They've
yeah,
probably since retired, and they still have yet to see a high speed rail in
yeah,
California.
yeah. And they're the question really is, what do we do now? Here's a
Right.
bunch of money that's been spent, nothing to show for. Um, if you cut your losses here and stop the project, which again, every governor is going to have this issue,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
It looks like
and
a massive failure and a total waste of the taxpayers' money if there's
yeah,
no results at all.
exactly. So what do? Do you stop pouring money into this because we have a huge deficit in California, from mass exodus, from tariffs affecting the shipment on our ports? And
Mm-hmm.
so the question is, what do you do? Do you keep chugging along and give it another 10, 20 years, or do you stop the project? And I don't know. What are your
I think there
thoughts?
are a couple of different ways to go about it, and maybe this is looking at it through rose colored lenses. But you either get the citizens to rally behind you and
Hmm.
like just redo the management, redo the budget, acknowledge the fact that hey, this is way behind schedule. We messed up on this.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to make it better. Let's all get together and finish it. Right? There's that
Yeah.
approach, which is maybe not anything different than what's been going on for the past 17 years. Um, and then there's also the approach of hey, maybe we do cut our losses and explore avenues to potentially sell what we've done to
Yeah.
private companies or potentially get private companies to come in and help.
Yes.
And and I think that may be a good segue into discussing how private companies in the high speed rail sector are starting to make headways into particularly California and Nevada by way of Brightline. And I think that may be a topic for our next episode.
Yeah, and they Brightline might lose funding too. But on that note, my home country, or at least my birth country, California is my home now. I think California is my home country. I know it's a home state, but to me, it's my country. I think that's
Sure.
that's why I started the I-5 report with you, because I think California it's its own country, and it's unlike anything else. But let me circle back to what I was saying earlier, that my birth country, there's this network of trains that they have,
Hmm.
and they have way more people than we do, and it's a smaller country, so it doesn't take a whole lot to build. But India partnered up with Japan to have these trains, and they're amazing. I've gone going to Italy and some of the European countries. I love trains. And the you bring up a great point, is that why it seems like everyone wants trains. This is why it's such a controversial topic. There's a side that says even the people that think that there's a mismanagement of money still think that there should be trains. Uh, it's infrastructure for generations, right? And then
Right.
there are, so could we had partnered up with private companies?
There was
And
actually an opportunity to do that
I did not know
in
that.
the very
Tell me more
beginning.
about that.
What's that?
I said I didn't know that. Could you share more
Yeah,
about that?
so you mentioned Japan, and I'd have to look up the specific locomotive technology or company that they were talking about, but they offered to partner up with us and to help us build this high speed rail, but the condition was that we had to use their technology.
Yeah,
And I don't know the details around why we didn't pursue that. I don't know why we didn't pursue it, but that, in hindsight, maybe that would have been a better option because they, at least anecdotally, not from my own personal experience, but from other people who have been to Japan that I know, they are literally miles ahead of us in terms of trains.
yeah, yeah. And if you, okay, my question to you: you're running the state. How would you go about it? Give our listeners, and if you're listening to
Oh
this,
man,
how would you do this? Comment below, and ideas can come from anywhere. This is our community. This is our state, home state. How would you go about it? So, Chad, you're in charge. What do
man,
you do?
putting you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the idea of partnership.
Mhm.
I I think that there are countries and other counterparts that have made significant headways into this. Like you brought up India, there's Japan. There are plenty of countries throughout Europe who have trains, maybe not high speed rail necessarily. Shoot, China has a high speed rail.
Yeah.
Um, and why can't we partner with them, figure out some sort of deal, not necessarily China, but just our other neighbors or other countries that have this technology already and have already made headways into this. Why can't we partner with them and make some sort of deal to really get this forward, get this across the finish line? I think the main thing probably, I can't speak for all voters. That's crazy. There's so many of them in California. It's ridiculous. But if I were a betting man, I would say that a very important next step is to actually see some track on the ground. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to ride from one location to the next on this high speed rail, even if it's like 50 miles or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's a train to nowhere, see some sort of result.
Yeah. Again, that snowball, right? Like seeing some results, and then yeah, seeing something tangible, right? There's this all
Yeah.
this pushing paperwork. Where are the results? If I were to be running, if I was running this, it would be, there's price and then there are terms, right? You don't necessarily have to give taxpayers money away to um, to get this done, right? I would say do the private partnership, public-private partnership, and help with the terms. And I think that's what's going to end up happening, in my opinion. That's, again, it's my opinion. I think President Trump is going to see this, and he's going to say, well, why are we giving away money to government, the federal funds, to do a very poor job? Why don't we have other countries come in, or other companies come in and thrive here, and we get this done? And I think that's what's going to end up happening. And I think it might even get, he might even, he might even brand it as Trump train, right? And I think that would be,
TT.
yeah. And I think he might actually rebrand it to Trump train, and that is his way of sticking it to California,
Hmm.
because he won a lot of states, and to come in here and to do it right will be something that he would enjoy. I think he's deal maker, and so if he gets this
Hmm.
done, his constituents, or yeah, his voters are going to be very impressed that there's this project 20 something years and it didn't get done. And here is a president, a businessman who can get a deal done. And that tells you, uh, can public, can the government really do an effective job? And what is government's role in these kind of things?
Yeah.
Um, so I think
Let me.
that's my projection.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Question: what would you be willing to pay for a ticket from Sacramento to Los Angeles on a high-speed rail?
That's a great question, actually. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I think, let's say, I mean, for me, I'm just kind of doing a cost analysis here. To go from Sacramento to LA, we just actually did that trip recently to go visit our friends, and it was, I think, somewhere upwards of $180 in gas, because we have a nice
Hmm.
car.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
an SUV,
Mm-hmm.
and so $180 is what I would, and then
That's
what is a
one
flight?
both ways.
Yeah, both ways. So
Okay.
one way, I would say I would pay a little extra because I'm not driving. So
Mm-hmm.
I would pay $100,
Per
100 to,
ticket per person.
yeah, in one way, 100,
Yeah,
$110. Yeah,
that's about what I would think as well. And if you think about it from that perspective, I mean, even if you got, let's say, 100 people traveling from Sacramento to Los Angeles, I mean, if you could get there in an hour and a half to 2 hours, there would be people who live in Sacramento or the Central Valley commuting
yeah,
to Los Angeles, no doubt.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So if
I
you
think,
think about it from that perspective, and maybe there's some sort of tax breaks or something, people would do that. And if you
yeah,
partnered with private companies and maybe offer them some sort of royalty program or something, there might be
yeah,
some sort of deal they could make there. But
yeah. Well, and then the other thing is, sorry, the other thing people don't realize is businesses, right? What a great opportunity to grow California. If you go to Italy, right, at the train station, there are smaller businesses there there's marketing happening, there's businesses happening. And so if you were to open a coffee shop or a bookstore or these companies that are, Capital One, they have their own little lounge, really elevating that experience. That would be that would bring so much business in that it would justify some of the cost. And I'm sure they thought of that and they kept pouring money into it. But I think doing a private partnership might have been a better idea.
yeah, yeah, that's the way I lean. I think. Yeah, and on that topic, I think that, like I said earlier, I think that's a really good segue into our next topic, which is broadening it out just a little bit to see how high speed rail connects California and particularly uh, Nevada via Brightline. Uh, Lots of interesting things going on there, but I think that'll wrap it up for episode 9 of the I-5 report. Thank you, everybody, for joining and for listening in. If you have any thoughts or comments, questions, anything like that, comment down below. And please like, share, and subscribe. Share it to your friends, your family, everybody you can think of. Share it to the person panhandling on the street. Um, any last thoughts, Raj?
No, I think you did it. I think you're right about it. Let's see what happens. We'll see what the news is about the federal funding. We can Well, we can talk about that in the next podcast. Thank you to our listeners who have been supporting us.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time.
All right. Bye.